Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steve Syrup. My name is Emily Burks, and tonight I have the pleasure of hosting trekking expert and personal trainer Sheri Goodwin for a segment on hut-to-hut hiking in Europe's Alps. Everyone, please join me in welcoming our guide for the evening, Sheri Goodwin. Sheri, welcome to
Hi.
Monday Night Travel.
Hi. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are very excited to have you here, Sheri. And some of you in the audience, if you ever attended any of our in-person travel classes here at Rick Steves Europe back before the pandemic, you may have taken one of Sheri's classes. She was a frequent speaker here, but tonight is her Monday Night Travel debut. And so, Sheri, I was wondering if we could start out by you just telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, back in 2012, I resigned my job. I was a physical education and health teacher, and I started a business that I call Transformational Trekking, where I train women in the greater Seattle area, in the outdoors and local parks for trekking adventures or even just day hikes. And I also am taking women on group treks, mostly in Europe.
Amazing. And I can definitely sympathize with turning a passion for travel into your career. So, yes, good for you. And
Thanks.
I know that your work does bring you to Europe, I think at least once a year. And so I'm wondering, what keeps you coming back for these treks? What is it about this style of
Mhm.
travel that you love so much?
Well, I love trekking in Europe, and there's many, many reasons. But I think one for a trekking reason is the trails in Europe allow you to hike from village to village, and there's accommodations in the village or hut to hut. And this means for a trekker that you don't have to have a super heavy backpack. There's no tent or sleeping bag or stove in your bag. So the light pack is very enticing. The second thing I love is as you're trekking along, discovering different ancient sites along the trail or old buildings, sometimes ruins of old castles, sometimes castles still intact. And sometimes stone circles or standing stones. And for example, I took a group this summer to Ireland and we trekked the Bear Away. And almost every single day, we were passing by a 3,000-year-old stone circle. So for me, it's interesting kind of to ponder the past, and that's not something we, see a lot in the US. And finally, I think uh, one of the biggest reason is all the people that you meet from all over the world on the trail and hearing the accents and different languages and having the trail be that one commonality that brings us all together. And uh, about 5 years ago, I met a great friend on the trail from Ireland, and we've been friends ever since, and we've even gone on treks together since then. So I love meeting people along the way. So there's many more, but I think I'll stop with three.
All right. Well, I think that was a great teaser for what's to
Mhm.
come. And Sheri, I know you've prepared a little something for us about three treks that you have actually done in Europe. And so, why don't we get started?
Great. All right. Well, today I'm going to be sharing three treks with you, the Walker's Haute Route, the Tour du Mont Blanc, and the Lechweg trek. During this presentation, we'll be looking at a map of the Alps region and where these three treks are located in the Alps, so you can kind of compare where they're at to each other. We'll talk about what you need to consider when choosing your first or your next trek. Then we'll go over each trek in more detail. And to conclude, we'll look at steps to successfully prepare for your first or your next trek in the Alps, and some tips to help you not just merely survive out there, but to thrive on what I like to call transformational journeys. Okay, so the Alps region spans 750 miles and it goes across 8 different countries. Um, there are 82 summits over 13,000 feet, and their tallest mountain is Mont Blanc at 15,774 feet. And the three treks we'll cover tonight are marked on the map by the little hikers. These hikers are just meant to give you an idea of about where the three treks are in relation to each other. I'll be going over a more detailed map of each of these in the talk. And if you like exacts, they are coming. So now when you're choosing your first or your next trek, there are a few things to consider, like the difficulty of the trek or your own fitness levels. So let's take a look at the three treks. I chose to share these three treks as they each have different difficulty levels and therefore require different levels of fitness. As you can see, there are some differences in overall mileage for each trek, and for the Haute Route and the Tour du Mont Blanc, you'll be crossing about 10 to 13 cols, and cols are mountain passes. On the Haute Route and the Tour du Mont Blanc, you're also going to be descending and ascending about 3,000 feet per day. Whereas the Lechweg trek, there are no cols or mountain passes to go up and over, and you're basically hiking in the valleys of the mountains along the Lech River and up into the foothills of the mountains, and you're staying in the villages. So as far as fitness levels go, for the Walker's Haute Route, this is by far the most challenging of the three. You should be an extremely fit hiker to do this trek. So extremely fit and very strong hiker. For the Tour du Mont Blanc, I'd say very fit, confident hiker. And for the Lechweg Trail, moderate fitness levels are okay. But you should still be a confident hiker if you're going out on a trek. Okay, so then the second thing to consider when deciding on a trek is what kind of accommodation do you prefer? Do you prefer a trek that goes to mountain huts or a trek that goes to village accommodations that are similar to a hotel? In the mountain huts, you'll have these types of sleeping scenarios. So kind of this dormitory style bunk beds and what we call sardine style, where the beds are all right next to each other and you're sleeping next to that new friend you met on the trail. And you're going to have shared bathrooms and showers. Singles and twins are available, but they're just a little bit harder to find. And it's something you'd have to reserve well in advance for. Whereas in the village accommodations, you'll have more of these types of sleeping scenarios. So you can easily find a single or twin room. This particular one is a village pension, so it has a kitchen area as well. Not all the places are going to have kitchens. So if you wanted to cook, you could find places with kitchens. You have your own bathroom, sitting area, maybe a balcony. So definitely two totally different types of ways of doing an adventure and sleeping scenarios. The third thing you need to consider when choosing your trek are your eating habits. Like, do you have any food allergies or intolerances? So within the Alps region, in the mountain huts and village hostels, they will generally have the option of something called half board. And half board is a bed, dinner, and breakfast. And sometimes they'll have full board, which would also include lunch. These are set meals. This happens in the hotels and also in the huts. And so for the set meals at the beginning, they'll probably have some sort of soup as a starter, and then the main dish, and they will probably have either a vegetarian or a meat eater's dish, and then some form of a dessert. Whereas if you're staying in the villages, you could go out to dinner and not do half board or full board, and choose from a menu. And these are just some examples of going to a restaurant in a village. You could also go to a store. Now, if you plan to do a hut and you do have some allergies, you can contact the huts ahead of time to see if they can accommodate your needs. And you could bring some of your own food with you just to supplement what they serve. But keep in mind that will make your bag a little bit heavier. And also know that huts operate in challenging environments and with limited resources, so they can't always accommodate your needs. So something to think about. Now staying in, let's see, sorry. The other thing are breakfasts. Okay, there's breakfast in the huts. It's usually fairly minimal. There's going to be breads and dry cereals. They'll have spreads for the bread like jam, butter, Nutella. And they might have some meats and cheeses, and they might have some fruits and coffee and tea. Whereas if you're in the villages, you're going to have a much bigger spread. So you're going to have yogurts and granola, nuts and seeds. There'll be a warm dish, maybe it's eggs that they'll cook for you, plus all the breads and croissants, cheeses, meats, fruits, lots of variety to choose from. And for lunch, uh, most of the time you'll go out, whether you're staying in the village or even the huts, you're either going to purchase it from the hut or your hotel, or you can go into a village and stop at a store or bakery and get your lunch there. The main thing to know, though, is that when you're hiking through the villages, that the store or the bakery is going to be open. So something to look ahead and do some research on. So now that we have gone over these important considerations, let's look at each trek a little bit more specifically. And we're going to start with the Haute route. Haute means high. So because it's up high, there's a very short season from mid-July to mid-September. If you go earlier or later, then you're starting to run into snow. So this trek starts in France, so it's in Chamonix, and it goes about 130 miles to Zermatt, next to the famous Matterhorn, and in Switzerland. Okay, if you're going to do this trek, I highly recommend that you purchase a guidebook. And a guidebook is not only great to have on the trail with you, but to have as you're researching, finding out more about the trek. These books will give examples of itineraries with the daily stages, maps, mileage, elevation gain and loss, and a detailed description of each day. You'll also find accommodations to stay at along the way to help with making reservations. So before I talk a bit about making reservations, I wanted to show you the itinerary that I went with to give you an idea. So this shows where we started and ended each day in the green color, and the mileage, plus how many hours it took, just hiking hours, not resting and having snacks or taking photos, how long it took to get from A to B. And whether there's a gondola to cut your day a little bit shorter. So it'll say up gondola or down gondola. So it just means the direction that you'll be taking it if you choose to take it. And I suggest that anytime there's a gondola to take it, it's a joyful experience out there on the trail. Now for reservations, how you make your reservations, I think depends on how much time that you have. Doing it yourself can be very time consuming and can be frustrating depending on the trek. One way to do it yourself is to use the guidebook. And in the guidebook, you're going to find different huts in there. And then you can look online and make reservations via online. The other way is to maybe join an alpine club of the country that you're going to be in. If you're going to be in a country for maybe a week or more, it might make sense to join an alpine club. And then you would make reservations from their website and get discounts on the huts. But if you're not going to be there that long, it might not make sense to do that. Now, if you don't want to spend the time it takes, because it takes a lot of hours and you want it done for you, there's plenty of companies out there that will do it for you. One that I recommend is Alpine Ventures Unguided. And I use them for the Haute route because I got incredibly frustrated that certain huts would be closed when I'm trying to make reservations. I didn't realize that they closed down for the season and they don't answer any emails until this next season opens up and they reopen. So I wasn't getting reservations when I wanted to, so I allowed a company to do it for me. And Alpine Ventures did a fantastic job, and it's Alpine Ventures Unguided. But if the other option for you, maybe you want to go with a group and a guide, and just so you know, they are out there. I don't have any recommendations because I haven't been with any, but you can research and find groups with guides to take you on these treks. Okay, so the other thing I recommend you look into when you're hiking the Alps are maps. Okay, these are two maps that I'm holding that you could purchase for this particular trek. And also looking into GPS apps, and those are very helpful when on the trail. I also highly recommend getting a weather app and a lightning app, just because there's always weather on the trail. You can expect to have storms when you're there. Now, however, the trails are very well marked. So let's look at the trail signs along this particular trek. For the Haute Route, you're going to see painted red and white stripes on rocks, trees, and sometimes buildings. And signs on posts will give the name of the next destination along the trail. It's not going to give you the end destination for your day until it is the next destination. So it's a good idea to have your guidebook with you because it's going to list all those accommodations along the way and help you out so that you know which sign direction to follow. So now that we've gotten through these important details, we can start our trek. So I'm going to take you through the Haute Route. So the Haute Route starts in Chamonix at the Mont Blanc train station. And before you head out, you might get a picture with Mont Blanc in the background and then head out on the trail. And most trails, when they leave from villages, are going to start on some asphalt walking, and this one was no different. And it also passed this really cool church with a steeple that is always neat in Europe to pass. And this particular area was not well marked. And this is the only place along this journey that wasn't well marked. But the good thing was is we had the guidebook, and the guidebook gives detailed instructions of how to start this off. And because we had that, we didn't have to go back to the information center and ask for directions. So we found our way to where the signs started. And eventually those trails led us up and up and up, which is a common theme on this trek, to a place where we could find, or we could see the first village that we were going to, called Les Tours. And when you look down at the village, you also look behind it because you get to see where you're going to start climbing up again. And just in those example of a steep climb that we had that day. And at the top, there's usually a lodge, like a ski lodge up there where you can go to the bathroom, get refreshments, and have a nice rest. And also at the top, there's usually a flat section where you can, relax a little bit, recover your legs, and enjoy the views. And in this section, we also discovered our next section of the trail, which was several hours of downhill, which eventually led us into our first night of stay in Triant. And this cute little town has this just adorable pink church up on the hill with the mountain in the background. It's a beautiful setting. One thing I recommend at every hut that you go to is that you ask them for if they know the weather for the next day and if they know about any trail conditions that you should be aware of. This particular night, there were some trail conditions that we needed to be aware of. There had been a mudslide on the trail. And so we thought we would have to take an alternate route. But then talking to more people, we found out that there had been some work done on the trail already, and it was okay for us to go. So we went. And this was the trail that had the mudslide. You can kind of see it. It was very steep. And this is part of the reason why I say this is the most challenging trek, because they have some steep trails like this that go on for a while. But when you get to the top of these, there's always places to sit and rest and enjoy the view. This is Glacier Triant. It's part of the Mont Blanc Massif in Switzerland. After a nice rest, head to the top of the col, which is the mountain pass. There's always a sign up there. You can have a little rest and then head down towards your place to stay for the day. And we stayed in this place, which is a little bit unusual because they mostly had 4-bedroom dormitory rooms and twin rooms. So just know that those options are there, but they're just sometimes few and far between. The next day we headed down into a valley and walked through this valley for quite a long ways until we got to the hills. And then we went up and up and up, of course, to our next place to stay. This particular place is very well known for the sunsets and in the morning, the great views as well. It's one of the highest places that we stayed at 8,061 feet. And the next day, you also go to the highest point on the trail. And sometimes when you're going higher and higher, you're going to run into snow. And this is one thing that before you go, you want to do a little research on the snow levels to see if you need to bring any snow gear. So things like snow spikes to put over your shoes. We didn't have them. We could have used them. But so definitely do your research. In this section, the blue and white is now your trail sign, not the red and white. And then eventually it goes back to the red and white. And your book will tell you that. So have your book so you know what to expect. At these high elevations, you may come across some furry friends too. These are ibex that hang out at these higher elevations, and then you might also come across some singing marmots, which are always fun. Along the trail, there's going to be some various types of terrain. So sometimes going over rocky parts that are taking you over a little, mountain lake. Um, but many different varieties of trails along the way. On this particular day, we climbed up and over 3 mountain passes. And on these long hikes, I'll tell you, it's always joyful to catch the first sight of your mountain hut. And this was our first sight. You can barely see it. It's blended in. But this one is unique in that if you look just below that mountain hut, there's a flat area, and it looks like there's an X and a cement area. This is where helicopters land for a couple reasons. It may be for emergency purposes, but also to supply these mountain huts with food and other things that they need. So this mountain hut in particular, if we wanted to buy anything else other than the half board, um, it cost probably 2 to 3 times the amount for wine, water bottles, and sunglasses. They're very expensive. So you might want to wait on buying those till you get to the villages. In all the huts, there is a hut etiquette that you need to follow. When you enter in, they want you to take your shoes off and then put your hut shoes on. These would be maybe slippers or flip-flops or teva shoes. Sometimes the huts will provide the slippers that they want you to wear. And then there's a place to hang your hiking poles and any wet gear that you might have. And this helps keep the huts clean. Okay. And after a sound sleep, it's back to the trail. We had a beautiful morning this particular morning and hiking on nice trails that led to these super rocky trails. And these rocky trails led to even more rocky trails with big boulders. Always look ahead when you enter a boulder field because you're going to see a lot of red and white stripes on the boulders. It's going to point the way to the trail. You shouldn't have to climb over any of the boulders to get to the trail. Now, these rocky fields led to some fun ladders to climb and some metal walkways to walk over as well. Now, imagine you've got a heavy bag on your back and climbing these. You've got to have a bit of strength to do so. When you've had a few long, challenging days like we had on the trail and dealt with the symphony of snores in the hut dormitories, it's always nice, a really nice reward that if you're going through a village to stay in a hotel. And this particular day, the trail ended in a village, so we took full advantage. No dormitories that night, and we had some drinks to celebrate with our trail friends. So now, sometimes in the mountains, beautiful mornings can be quite deceiving and lead to mountain storms by noon. Clouds and rain can quickly roll in. Temperatures can drop dramatically, and all of a sudden, you can be soaked and cold. So my advice is as soon as you see some clouds rolling in, and you've checked the weather the night before, so you know it's going to happen, put your warm gear on and your rain gear. Even if you're warm, I would do that. And then check your lightning app and be sure you're not in the path of a lightning storm. If you are, find appropriate cover. So after the storm, I'll admit we were soaked and cold, but luckily our next place to stay wasn't far ahead. And this was a wonderful place to stay. And they had a drying room as well, where we put all of our wet clothes, and by morning, everything was dry. So I recommend staying at this place. They had wonderful food, beautiful view of Maury Glacier, and just a wonderful place. And it's fairly new. Now, when hiking in the Alps, you should expect to see some lovely, loving, curious, and alpine cows right along the trail with you. You should also expect some amazing vistas and definitely expect some mountain hamlets. And expect those mountain hamlets to have cable cars to take you down the mountain. And I definitely recommend taking these. This one happens every 30 minutes, so you don't have to wait too long to take one down. But definitely a fun ride, and it saves your knees. Now, as you venture towards the most challenging part of the Haute Route, you can rest easy because Saint Bernard, the patron saint of the Alps, of mountain travelers and pilgrims, is watching out for you, and he's pointing the way. He'll give you the courage to tackle the infamous and the rather scary Europa Weg. Now, sections along the trail are often closed due to rock slides, as you can imagine, taking out this path. So do your research before you head out, whether you will need to take a detour or not. Now, St. Bernard also will give you the courage to cross what was once the longest pedestrian suspension bridge in the world. That title belongs to the Czech Republic now. It's 721-meter bridge. Not sure I want to cross that one. And luckily, along the way, they do have some safety measures put in place for places that rocks are known to fall. So definitely take advantage of those and walk under them. Once you make it out of these last few sections, you may feel a lot of relief, especially when you finally get sight of the Matterhorn. To end this trek, you walk through the mountain hamlet that's in front of you and down into Zermatt, which leads us to our next trek of the evening, the Tour du Mont Blanc. So from one challenge to the next. This one, you can go on it a little bit earlier, so in early July to mid-September, but it's still high up, so you can't go too early. And this particular trek is a circular trek going through 3 different countries. Most people will start in Les Houches, just outside of Chamonix, and go counterclockwise from France to Italy to Switzerland. You can go clockwise, it's just up to you. Now, like the Haute Route, purchase a guidebook, and this is going to help you research and plan your adventure. And just to give you an idea, this is my 9-day itinerary, which should have been 10 days. The last day was way too long. It was 20 miles. Split that in half and make it 10. If you're looking to make reservations on your own, there is an amazing website called montourdumontblanc.com. I highly recommend using it. Basically, you go to this website, you put in the first place where you want to start. It's going to ask you, do you want to go counterclockwise or clockwise? You put that in. Then once you put that in, up pops up several different huts along the way. And each are going to say how many minutes it takes to hike to these huts or hours. And so you get to choose how many hours you want to hike each day based on where the huts are. And once you choose your hut, maybe you want to do 4 hours, you choose that hut, click on it, and then it's going to pop up with, do you want half board or full board? Remember, half board is breakfast, dinner, and a bed. Full board includes the lunch with that. And then it's also going to ask you what kind of dormitory would you like to sleep in, a quad or one that's bigger. And if they have a twin room will pop up. So you click on those and then you click reserve, and then the next set of huts pops up. It's amazing, and it'll show, the hours it takes. So you can create your trek from this website very easily, and I highly recommend doing it. Now, if you don't want to bother and you don't want to spend the hours doing that, you can always, research a company to do it for you. And again, I would advise going with Alpine Ventures Unguided because I loved what they did for me. And there are groups that go out on the Tour du Mont Blanc with guides. So you can find those online as well. Again, unfortunately, I don't have any recommendations because I haven't used any. Okay. All right, again, I recommend purchasing a map for this trek. I didn't have a picture of my map, but this is a free map that I have a picture of that you'll get when you arrive. But the name of the map to buy is above, and you can check that out. There is a trail app that is specifically designed for the Tour du Mont Blanc, which is abbreviated TMB, and that's the hiker app. So check that out before you go, and then figure out which weather apps you want to take with you. Like the Haute Route, this trail is also very well marked. The TMB is what's going to be on the signs to represent the Tour du Mont Blanc. If TMB is not on the sign, don't go that direction. And again, they're going to show the next village along the route, not your end village. So make sure you've got your book handy so you know where you're going. Also, every now and then there's 2 different ways to go on the trail. Make sure that you are going to the route that's going to lead you to your hut. Okay, so very important. Now that we know these basics, we can take off on our hike, which was the beginning of it was a very long, steep uphill from Les Houches to above Les Houches to get this nice mountain view in France. Now, we continued on the trail, eventually coming to a wonderful place to sit and have a rest and a bite to eat and something to drink. There are more places like this along the Tour du Mont Blanc than there are on the Haute Route. After a rest, it's back to the trail, and oftentimes you're going through villages or towns. And I suggest that when you do, that you stock up on lunch foods or snack foods for the trail. And if you've run out of something in your first aid kit, then you can purchase some things in the town to resupply. Now, leaving this town and any village along the way, you're going to start climbing because you're going back up and over another mountain pass. So we started climbing and we found the only snow on this route. It wasn't much, so we were fine getting through it. But again, do your research about snow levels before you go. Heading up and over the pass and down, we left the snow behind and back to the grass and dirt trails. These trails led to our place to stay for that night. Now, this place had a large dormitory room, a half board and large dormitory room. It had 4 bedroom rooms and it had twin rooms. One twin room was a shared bathroom situation, and the other twin room, you had your own bathrooms. So I've listed the prices for each on the end, so you can kind of just look through that. But the 2 twin rooms, that is the price for both people, whereas the half board, large dormitory and half board 4 bedroom is individual for each person price. Okay. And this is just to give you an example for this particular place we stayed. This was the dormitory setting that we slept in. One thing that you need to know for the mountain huts is that you need to have a sleep sack, some sleep sack with you that you bring. They don't provide bed sheets for you, so they won't let you sleep there unless you have a sleep sack of some sort. Also, you should have earplugs because you're gonna definitely not sleep well if you don't have them. And a hand towel for when you're washing your hands, as well as a showering towel that will dry quickly. Now, there's no Wi-Fi, as you notice in the pictures, at this particular location. Other locations do have Wi-Fi, but know that great connections can be made over dinner and breakfast at the huts. So you don't always need to go on Wi-Fi. Eventually on the trail, you will hit a border. And the border control from France to Italy was amazing because there was none. Only freedom out there on the trails. Now the trail continued down to a beautiful flat section where there was this just gorgeous little lake that was flat and super still, and it mirrored the mountains around us. This path, of course, led to an up path, and this time the up path had some rocks to navigate, so we had to be a little bit careful navigating the rocks. And eventually, what goes up must come down, so we had another big down, and this was a muddy, kind of rocky downhill, just an example of one that we had to be careful again. We could have ridden the gondolas there if we had waited an hour, but we chose to mosey on and get on with our trek. So this down led to a village, and then of course another climb out of the village and up and up. And a lot of times these up climbs have beautiful backdrops. So I like to get those photos. And then they lead to, of course, a nice rest stop at the top. And this particular rest stop was the border of Italy and Switzerland. And as we crossed over and into Switzerland and headed down to our next village, we knew our adventure was all too quickly coming to an end. And eventually we were back in France and above Chamonix with amazing views of Mont Blanc. And as we made our way down to Chamonix, we couldn't wait to celebrate our accomplishments and stay at a hotel. So that is the Tour du Mont Blanc. And now for the final trek of the night, which is a little bit different than the 2 you just saw, is the Lechweg trail. The Lechweg trail, the best time to go is a little bit earlier, so mid-June to early October. It's a trail that is lower down, so the snow levels aren't going to be as much on these trails in June. So this trek starts in Formorency, Austria, and it runs along the trail to Fusen, Germany, and to the fairy tale castle of Neuschwanstein. Unlike the other two treks, I could not find a guidebook in English. However, they do have a free downloadable booklet that I highly recommend if you're going to do this trek to download it and print it off and take it with you. You can go to lectal.at to download it. It will have everything you need to know in this booklet, and including possible accommodations to reserve. I printed one and took it with me, and I used it every single day on the trail to read ahead to see what was coming. Also decide on a trail map and your apps. Okay, and after you've done your research, you can create your daily stages. These were my daily stages that I decided upon, and they seem to do us quite well. And if you want to make reservations yourself, you can use the free booklet to find the hut names and then look them up online to make reservations. If you want it done for you, you can research a business online to do it for you. Alpine Ventures Unguided doesn't do this particular trek. And if you want to go with a group and a guide, I will actually be leading a group next either late June or early July next summer with a local guide. So if you're interested in going with a women's group, please let me know. My information will be at the end. Send me an email. But if you want to go with another group, they're out there. So just look them up online. Okay. Now, this is a unique trail because they have this amazing bus service between all the villages en route. And you're staying in these villages, so you're always kind of near the village buses. These buses run about every hour from each village. If you want to shorten a day or bypass a challenging section, you can take the bus ahead. It's easy to do. If you were to get injured or sick, you can take the bus ahead. So it's a really nice option. This trek has a guest pass. Guest passes in the different regions that you pass by. These cards on all but the first day of the trek give you free bus rides and sometimes free gondola rides. You can receive this card from most accommodations. So before reserving at a hotel, I would ask them if they give this guest card out, and make sure they do. The first day's bus ride is rather expensive due to the land that the buses drive on being actually privately owned. So it's a 25 euro bus ride, and if you want to use a gondola in Lechem Arlberg, which is the first village you stay at, it's a 25 euro gondola ride. So you won't have to have those high expenses in other places throughout the trail, though. So this trek also, really cool thing, has infrastructure for baggage transfers the whole route. So if you want to send ahead things that you aren't using on the day hike, you can have your luggage transferred ahead to your next place to stay, versus lugging everything on your back. So it costs about 12 euros per bag per day to do this. Now on the Mont Blanc trek and the Haute Route trek, this is possible only if you're staying in the huts from time to time. So for example, maybe you've done 3 days in the mountain huts and you come down to a village. In that village, you could have your bags transferred to the next village that you might stay at. But this means that whatever you're sending ahead, you probably won't see for about 3 or 4 days until you get to the next village. So it's possible to do a little bit of that along those treks, but it's not, you're up in the huts. They can't drive up to get your bag from each hut. Okay, so now on to the trail signs for this particular trek. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So there's a little bit of lag there, so I'm going to backtrack here. There we go. So the trail signs, it's very well marked along the way, and what you're looking for are the L's. You're going to see L's on trees, on stones, on, wooden pegs. Even old barns are going to have the L on it for the Lechweg. The signs will also have the L on it, and there's several different trails in these areas. So you're going to see many different places to go, but don't follow the sign unless it has the L. Okay. Okay, so now we are ready to start the journey. And the bus will pick you up from the bus stop in Lech am Arlberg, and it takes you to the source of the Lech River, the Formorency Lake, where your journey begins. It's about a 35-minute bus ride up to the lake. And after you do a little circular loop around the lake, you head down the trail, and it's actually quite a rocky trail at the beginning that you're heading down. So you have to be mindful of your footing. And eventually you're going to catch your first views of the Lech River. Um, and then you're going to continue on the path along it. And there's different types of trails. You've got the dirt trail with some pebbles, rockier trails, and you have the wooden trails, the walkways with benches. There's all kinds of benches along this trek to sit and just enjoy the beauty all around you. Now, the trail will sometimes go through cow fields. So I want to talk a little bit about cow etiquette. Due to going through cow fields, they do have fences and gates in place to keep the cows in and allow you, the trekker, to get in and out. Be sure that when you use these fences that you rehook fences, that you close gates, just so that the cows or sheep or goat don't get out. Now, when you're approaching cows in a field, really be mindful if there is a bull. If there's a bull, you want to go well around this group, or even take a different route, especially if there's young in the field with the bull. If there's not, and you've kind of scooped it out, and you don't see any young, you're should be fine to go ahead. Most cows are going to be quite loving and just curious about you. But be mindful, read the crowd and make sure that it's okay, and then proceed. However, even as careful as you can be and you're trying to get around the cows and not disturb them, you're always going to have a cow or two that are going to walk up to you and they're going to demand just one little kiss. And these really are precious moments. I love it when the cows interact with me, and that was my husband, that they're trying to kiss, but still, be safe, be careful. Now, eventually the trail leads back into Lech am Arlberg to end your first day. Now, all these villages that you go through, most of them are ski resorts. And so most of them are going to have ski lifts or gondolas. I highly recommend that you ride the gondola when you get a chance. So because it's going to give you a great overview of the village you're staying in, plus where you came from on the trail and where you're going the next day. So we took the gondola up, and you can go to the mountain lodge. You can sit and have a drink or something to eat and just enjoy the view around you. Now, one of the cool things about trekking in Europe is that sometimes you come across festivals or parades for holidays that we don't observe here, and they are dressed in traditional clothing. And this was a holiday. This was observed as a national public holiday for Corpus Christi. It's a Catholic holiday. Now, for the trekker, what this means is that places close down. And that means stores close down and some restaurants close down. So once you create your itinerary, look to see if you're going to land on any holidays. And if you do, it's fine. You still want to go on the holidays because that's fun. But you want to plan ahead. So the day before the holiday, do your shopping for food, because nobody wants to be around a hangry trekker out on the trail. So get enough food so that you are a kind and compassionate trekker. So the next day we took off and had lovely views of the river, and eventually seeing views of our next village high above the river. And what this means is you see the village high above and you're like, oh, I've got to trek down to the river and then up to that village. So a lot of climbing. But the climbing was worth it because we went to the village of Worth, which is beautiful. And like every other village in the area, it has their very own church with a steeple. But what was different about this village were the Olympic rings on the building, that hopefully you can see that. Worth is home to two Olympic champions in alpine skiing, a father and son, of course, different years, and a woman named Wiltrid Drexel, who placed second in alpine skiing. And it's not hard to believe that they have Olympians in this village when you're there and you're seeing mountains all around you. And here's just another one mountain that's in the area that you're looking out at in Worth. Now, this particular day happened to be the day before my husband's 55th birthday. And somehow I managed to put us in a very small, stuffy, and hot bunk bed room with shared bathrooms and showers. So I quietly snuck out of this situation and went looking for better accommodations. And I managed to find his birthday upgrade, which was this. Very spacious room just for the two of us and a balcony with fresh air coming in. It had beautiful views of the mountain around Worth. It was amazing. And the upgrade did not cost as much as I would have thought it would. And it gave us breakfast for two. And it was 220 euros, which would be about 256 USD. And the next morning, leaving Worth on Tom's birthday was beautiful. You can see the mountains again that's are the backdrop of Worth. Along this trail, we would run into lots of fun landmarks, and here's a few. One, a little mountain chapel to cool off in on a hot day. These pop up in different places, or on a rainy day, it's a great place to take cover. There are also these refreshments, shelter with refreshments with prices on the wall and an honesty box to put your money in. Also, fountains you're going to see along the way to either fill up your water bottle or to wash your hands. As we trekked, we found out that this area is known for their cheese, and cheese factories started popping up. There are a couple along the way. So, as you would imagine, they have great cheesy meals in this area to try. And please excuse my German pronunciation, but this cheesy meal we had was, I think, Käsespatzel. It's probably not quite right, but that's the best I can do. But it's like mac and cheese, but only better with much better cheese and much better noodles. So when you're there, try it out. Käsespatzel. I think that's a better pronunciation. One of the things I love about hiking in Europe, besides occasional cultural parades, is hiking by old buildings. And this old building is the second oldest church in the Lech Valley. It opened in 1401 AD and has beautiful artwork and stained glass windows. It's worth a peek for sure. And so is its cemetery. And what's unique about their cemeteries, and I've seen this in Austria and Germany, is that each person that's buried there has their own little garden of flowers, and they're very well kept up. So their cemeteries are very pretty. After a church visit, we were back hiking along the river and eventually came to a pedestrian hanging bridge that we went over. Now, if you have a fear of heights and you don't want to cross this, there is another trail and you can get around it so you don't have to cross it. Now, beyond this bridge, we hiked well above the river with great views throughout the day. And one of the best views we discovered was when we stopped and we looked back to where we had been. And this was the view. While other great views required a relaxing chairlift after a long and steep climb. Now, like cheese factories we found along the route, wood carvings started popping up along the trail. And about halfway through this trek, you'll find the town of Elbigenalp, where there's a college for arts and crafts, sculpture, gilding, and sign making, hence all the fun wood carvings en route. While many of the trails of this trek are right along the river, along the Lech River, with beautiful views up to the mountains, like this one, there are also trails that take you away from the river and require uphill climbs like these. But these uphill climbs always take you to a beautiful viewpoint. And this was one of them. We were looking across down to the Lech River and to the village of Elmen and the mountain backdrop. But remember, it's not just important to look behind you or across, but you also need to look ahead because otherwise you'd miss out on the beauty all around you. And you also need to look ahead for obvious reasons to find your way and because moving ahead eventually leads to your home away from home for the night. And this was one hotel that we stayed in. Beautiful hotel with amazing 4-course dinner because we chose the half board and we got 4 courses. The breakfasts were divine, just all kinds of food to try. But so it's really lovely staying in these village hotels. Now, leaving this hotel, we started noticing a major change to the Lech River. It was much, much wider from the beginning of the trek. So you'll notice that as if you do this trek, it starts out really narrow and then gets wider and wider. This particular day, we definitely hit a heat wave while we were there. It was close to 95 and we were really hot and really tempted to get into the Lech River. But there is an undercurrent, so we never really felt comfortable going for a swim. Didn't think it would be all that safe. But luckily for us, there was a lake, a mountain lake along the way, and it was Tom's birthday all over again. He jumped in first, and then I jumped in. It was a crystal clear mountain lake, beautiful colors, and perfect temperature. So we both highly recommend that if you get the chance, jump in the mountain lakes along this trail. Now, sadly, there's always an ending to every great journey. The very next day, we'd be entering Germany and be ending our journey. But little did we know that we would enter in through an enchanted forest. With a few unenchanted, wicked trails requiring a metal handrail to help navigate the roots and the rocks. However, this enchanted forest did lead us to our first glimpses of the castles, the Hohenschwangau and the Neuschwanstein Castle, and eventually led us to our last inviting lake just below the castles. Now, you can finish your trek right here below the castles with a swim, and you can stay in accommodations just beyond the lake. Or you can take a break at the lake, go for a swim, get a snack, or have lunch, and then head through another enchanting forest to the final end of this trek, which is at Lech Falls. And here's a picture of that. And in the stone, you might see the sculpture of King Maximilian II. And after you get your pictures at the finale and you give each other high fives for finishing, then you can take the short walk. It's about 5-10 minutes to walk into the old Bavarian town of Fusen and onto your accommodations. It's a very cute town to finish in. So that's my 3 incredible treks to show you tonight. Now it's time for you to make your decision on what trek you want to do. And as a reminder, here's what you might want to consider when choosing your first or your next trek. First, how difficult the trek is and your current fitness levels, sleeping arrangements, and food habits or intolerances, plus costs. Also incredibly important is that when you're on the trail, once you've chosen your trek, you want to purchase the guidebook for your particular trek and look for maps and trail apps that you'll need. And then decide on your itinerary, the daily stages, how many days, mileage per day, elevation, gain and loss, and then consider how many days you can be away. And you might even consider a partial trek if you can't get away to do a whole trek. And then you'll want to reserve accommodations and your food. So if you want half board or full board. And I would recommend 6 to 9 months in advance to make your reservations because especially if you want twin rooms, you've got to reserve well in advance, and you're not always going to get them. But just know the further in advance you reserve, the more likely you'll get what you want. And then look at the transportation ahead of time, like from the airport, what transportation do you need to take to get to the route? And you want to reserve that. So you might need a train and a bus to get to where you're going. And then while you're on the trail, what kind of transportation is there? Like on the Lechweg, there's great transportation, but some trails won't have as good of transportation. You kind of want to find out what's there just in case you need to take a day off, or if you get injured or sick, what's going to be there to help you. And then figure out what's your transportation going home back to the airport and make those reservations. Okay. Also incredibly important is that when you're on the trail, You are thriving and not just merely surviving. So there's 3 steps to thrive that I'm going to share with you tonight. And the first one, whoops. Oh, there it is. Hopefully it's not gonna, okay, sorry. The first one is to take care of your feet. Okay, your feet are incredibly important. If your feet aren't happy, you're not going to be happy. So make sure you go to the store and you try on shoes that are going to fit your feet well. Everybody's different. And I always get asked, what kind of shoes do I wear? And I say, well, I wear Hoka trail runners and I always wear trail runners, but that doesn't mean that you should wear them too. It's whatever fits your feet best and what you're comfortable with. My husband is comfortable with I think those are Ultra boots, and that's what he likes to wear. So we're all different. Now, in your training, if you start to notice that you blister in certain areas, then what I suggest is before you head out on your day's hike to tape that area. If you tape that area, you're going to help prevent blisters from forming. Because I'd say blisters are probably the #1 injury on the trails. So you really want to take care of your feet and do what you can to prevent them. The other thing you can do is as soon as you feel a hot spot coming on, if you feel them, then you can put something on them immediately, called Compeed. This is really popular in Europe. It's this squishy kind of second skin feeling Band-Aid. We also have them here. They're just not called Compeed. It's that little Band-Aid box next to the Compeed is what we have here, and I love those. As soon as I feel something like a hot spot coming on that could form into a blister, I put one of those on, and it prevents that blister from forming. The other thing I suggest when you're on the trails to keep your feet happy is every couple hours, take your shoes and socks off, let them air, give your feet a massage, and that's going to help them a lot. And then if there's a water source, put your feet in the water. It's going to cool them off. It's going to decrease some of the inflammation that happens naturally when we hike, and make your feet a lot happier. So that's the first thing that's going to help you thrive on these trails. The second thing is to pack light. Really try to keep that backpack light so that you are not carrying extra pounds with you out there. Now, I wanted to point out a few things before I pop up the whole list, the packing list, and just know this is a basic packing list. There are other things that you can bring with you, and this list will be given to you in a follow-up email, so you don't have to, try to write down everything. But one thing I recommend anytime you're in the mountains is a bivy sack or an emergency blanket. These are really small and they are lightweight and they go in your backpack or in your med kit. And they're going to help regulate your body temperature in warm and cool weather if there were an injury. So if you get injured on the trail and you are waiting for medical help, if you're in the middle of a storm, you need something to put over you. You're going to get cold. And then you could run into other problems. And if you're in the heat, this is going to help regulate your body temperature so you don't get too hot waiting for help. So that's #1 thing I highly recommend. The other thing I highly recommend is a map case, and it should be a waterproof map case. I always have my guidebook open to the day that we're doing so I can read about it. There's a map and it shows the stages, like the little villages that you're going to be going through so you know which signs to follow. So I recommend a map case. And then some new technology that's out is the cooling chili pad towel. These are great because you get them wet and you can put them around your neck and they'll stay cool for hours. They're fantastic. So I've had some of my group trekkers use them and they absolutely love them. And the other thing some of my gals will use is an umbrella. And this is both for rain and for heat to keep the sun off of you. And it'll keep you cooler and drier. So that is something I'm seeing more and more of on the trails are these little hiking umbrellas. They go around your head. Some of them will hook to your backpack. And the last thing to think about is what size backpack are you going to take with you? If you're doing the Lechweg trail and you're having your bags transferred, you're just going to need a day pack. So anything up to 30 liters is fine. You'll have plenty of room in probably, I probably recommend 25 to 30 liter pack for a day pack. The other trails, you're probably going to need anywhere from like a 35 to 55 liter pack. And some people might go even bigger. It just depends on how much you're taking. Okay. The last thing I'm going to mention on here that I haven't mentioned yet, and I need to, is making sure that you have cash in the proper currency. The hut systems are on a cash basis only for the most part. It's rare if they take credit cards. And you'll put down a down payment usually, and then when you get to the hut, then they want the rest of it in cash. So you've got to have enough cash for your entire trek when you're using the hut system. In the villages, most of them will take credit cards, but there's still times when you need cash. So always have cash on hand. So this is just, you don't need to read this. It's going to be sent to you, but this is a packing list, just very basic, generic packing list for hiking in the Alps. Okay. Now, the last thing that you want to do to thrive out there on the trail is, of course, gotta wait for this to move forward here. Okay, hopefully. Okay, so the next thing is obviously to train for your trek. You want to hike, get out there and hike. If you're just starting out, then start with 30 minutes around the neighborhood and around the neighborhood parks. And then you're building, each week you can build 10, 15 minutes, and you're building to hopefully get to 4 to 6 hour hikes. And I always recommend to my trekkers that they try to do 3 days in a row, about a month before their trek, of the mileage that they're going to be doing on the trail. And the reason why I have them do this is because I want them to see, what does it feel like to hike day in and day out? How does your body respond? How well do the clothes that you've purchased for your trek work? If something, let's say maybe your socks are rubbing you the wrong way, you have time to make a change to your socks or your shoes. So you'd wear what you're wearing on the trek, and then you find out if your bag squeaks. You could get that fixed before you go, because that's annoying. And any other little things that need to be fixed before you go, you can fix them a month in advance versus trying to fix them on the trail. And then after you've done some hiking training, the other thing that you want to do in your training is some strengthening exercises. This is going to help with balance on the trail and help with all those ups and downs and keeping the muscles strong. It's also going to help prevent injuries by having strong muscles. I recommend things like squats, lunges, single leg deadlifts, band work. There's a lot of band work out there that's going to help keep your hips strong and your knees strong and just help with knee and hip stabilization. There's also a lot of balance work that you can do because you need to stay upright on the trail. We don't want to be falling. My favorite workout, this next one, are hill intervals. I love doing hill intervals because they help you to get in shape quite quickly, and they're going to help you with all those hills on the trail. And what you do for these is you start at the bottom of a hill, and you pick maybe a 1 to 3 minute long hill. If you're just starting out, pick a 1 minute hill, and you progress. And as you go up the hill, you want it to feel like it's difficult to hold a conversation with a friend. It doesn't need to be more than that. If you're feeling yourself huffing and puffing and you can barely get air in, you're going too fast. Slow down. So it's a feeling state of, it feels a little hard to get words out in a conversation. Then you're at that right place. And you maintain that for the whole hill. And then on the walk down, you're recovering. Okay, so you're never doing a fast pace on the way down. At the bottom of the hill, hopefully you've recovered. If you haven't, you can take a little bit more time to recover and then repeat. And as you get stronger, you maybe start out with 3 repeats and then build to 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Okay, and you can increase time as well. The other thing that's really important to stay healthy during your training and for your trek is to create a warm up and cool down routine. And that could be static stretching after the workout. And static stretching, you're holding for 30 to 60 seconds. And then maybe you're also doing some foam rolling or stick rolling. And you can do the foam rolling and stick rolling at the beginning as well for a nice warm up routine. And I don't have time to go into the details of those, but you can look that up online. Yeah, and as when you're training, if you live in the Seattle area or the greater Seattle area, I do work with women in local area parks in the great outdoors. It's a great community of women, and my season is just starting next month on August 4th. And these are the dates and the times. It runs through December 19th. And the cool thing about it is you don't have to be here for the whole season. Most of my ladies travel a lot, so they show up when they're home. And in August, we start at 9 a.m. and go to 11 a.m. And Tuesdays are earlier at 8 to 10. The rest are 9 to 11. When the weather starts to get cooler, we'll change that 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., go from 10 to 12. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out to me. I'd love to meet you and trek with you in the great outdoors. So if you're interested in any of that, my information is here. Um, and I think it's also going to be sent to you in a follow-up email. But thank you, everyone. I hope that each of you get to get out on the trails and go on an alpine adventure, whether it's one of the three treks I showed you or another one, because there are a ton of trails out there. And I hope you're safe and you fully thrive out there on the trails.
That was awesome. Thank you for taking us through those three different treks. I have to say, just the grand finale of that last one, the Lechweg, where you see those two castles in the distance. Like I can't imagine a better way to end a hike. But we do have a couple questions for you. But before we get to those, I do have a quick word from our sponsor. And tonight our sponsor is our Alpine My Way tour to be on theme. So this is a Rick Steves tour that focuses on Europe's Alps. You'll start in Baroque Salzburg, then head to Italy, where you'll stay in the Dolomites. Then it's on to Fussen, Germany, which is where Sheri's last trek ended, just next door to Neuschwanstein and Hohenschwangau. Then it's 3 days in the Lauterbrunnen Valley, and for your grand finale, you will finish in Chamonix in the shadow of Mont Blanc. So this is one of our unguided tours, one of our My Way tours, and if you are interested, you can find it on our website. And on that note, Sheri, I have a couple of questions for you. You've certainly got a lot of people excited about these hikes, so I think you've inspired maybe some alpine treks. But to start things off, we actually had somebody write in over email to us. Her name is Kirsten, and she is wondering if altitude sickness is an issue on any of these treks and whether or not it's possible to acclimate to altitude after a few days out there.
Yes, great question. Definitely on the Lechweg, I'd probably say no, you're not going to have, um, I wouldn't think any altitude sickness. Now, I did notice on the Lechweg, just, my breathing was a little bit changed the first few days because you are starting at around 5,000 feet. So it's higher than sea level, like we're used to. But then after, first few days, I felt better on the trails. Um, the higher routes, you are definitely acclimating as you go, and you're not at the high for the Haute Route. You're not at the 9,000 foot level until I think day 3, I think. Um, and then once you get to 9,000, you are coming down to the hut. So that helps acclimate. Some people could experience some altitude sickness at that level. I didn't experience any, and my friends didn't. I didn't see anyone or hear of anyone having any trouble on any of these three treks as far as altitude sickness. Um, and generally, when you arrive to, let's see, Chamonix, you might spend a couple days there first and just get, acclimated to one, the time change, because if you're coming from the US, it's a big time change, but also just acclimated to that higher elevation, and that's going to help a lot before you start your trek. So it's a good question. But didn't seem to have people didn't seem to have any problems, but I do recommend that staying a few days prior to acclimate.
Yeah, I love that. And as a bonus, you get to hang out in Chamonix a little
Yes.
longer. Okay, so um, we definitely had some people in the Zoom tonight with us who are interested in trekking, but I think that some of them consider themselves to be healthy, active people, but they're inexperienced hikers. Would you say, how would you recommend starting out this journey? I know you gave some training advice at the end of your presentation, which was excellent. But would you say maybe the Lechweg Trail or something a little more moderate would be a good place to start?
Yeah, I think the Lechweg Trail would be great because of the bus system. Like, especially if when you read ahead in the Lechweg guidebook, the booklet, it'll let you know which days are more challenging than others. And if there's a super challenging section, but there's a few of them for sure, you can easily bus ahead and just bypass that section. So I think for that reason, the Lechweg is an awesome trail to start on in the Alps. Whereas the Haute Route and the Tour du Mont Blanc, definitely wouldn't start with those, if especially if this is a first trek. Those would be kind of a rude awakening. So,
Yeah,
um,
and as you said, you're there to thrive and not just
yes.
survive. You're there to enjoy yourself. So it's
Yes.
okay to take the bus.
Yes.
Um, okay, I guess on a similar note, Beth H was wondering for those who are not lucky enough to train with you in person, maybe they don't
Mm.
live in the Seattle area, are there any alternative training programs that you know of that you would recommend? Um, or yeah, where should people look if they can't join you in person?
Um, yeah, 'cause I'm not, there are definitely, online programs where people are training people online. I don't do a lot of that. Just very rarely do I do that. But they do exist. Bring up Lee Walton is a name. And if that person wants to get in contact with me, I can get them in touch with some really good online trainers that are um, specific for hiking. And but I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know his email. But they
That's
do
okay.
exist, and I would be happy to give that information out.
Yeah,
Because
and we actually could send that in our follow-up email tomorrow so we can include that in the email
okay,
that goes out to everyone who joined us tonight. So,
okay, great,
yes, we can talk afterwards and make
good.
sure we have that written down. Um, let's see. I think I will ask you just one or two more questions. Okay, I was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about the atmosphere in the mountain huts. Is this a social scene? Is it a party scene like I think a lot of people think of when they think of hostels?
Yes. Well, it is definitely a social scene. Like at dinner, you're having great conversations from people all over the world, which is really special. And you get to know them a little bit about their country. I think that's kind of the fun part of it. But right after dinner, people are going to bed. Nobody's up partying because everybody's just had a long hike on the trail and they're tired. And lights out are usually at 10 p.m. sharp, and you're not supposed to be noisy at that time until 7 a.m. So it's quiet time, it's great because trekkers get up early and leave, and you want to get a good night's sleep out there in the trails. So huts are a safe bet that you're gonna sleep well as long as you've got those earplugs.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
So it sounds like even if you've graduated from the youth hostels, the mountain huts they're different there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Definitely better than the youth hostels. Yes.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Okay, Sherry, I think we will just do one more question tonight. And I was wondering if you have a favorite trek. Maybe it's not in the Alps. It sounds like you go to Ireland and Scotland a lot with your group. So, is there one trail in particular that has really stolen your heart?
Oh boy. This is a hard one, and people ask this question a lot, and I like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with because I did just, the Ireland's ones I did just do, so I'm always like in love with them afterwards. and I do love them passionately. But I'm going to go with my first ever trek, which was hiking into Machu Picchu, which is how I got interested in trekking, and how I knew what I was going to do after teaching was this. And it was just this phenomenal trek through the mountains. And it seemed like every time we'd go up and over a high place, you'd look down, you see this ancient site. And every time you go around a corner, there's another ancient site. And I just absolutely loved it. And then hiking in, being able to hike into Machu Picchu versus taking the train with everybody else in a crowded situation, you get to see Machu Picchu kind of when the crowds aren't there. That was that was definitely a life-changing trek for me, and a favorite. The scenery is just to die for. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend doing that. There's a sister, Machu Picchu has a um, sister site called Choque Corral, and there's also a hike to Choque Corral, which I'd highly recommend. Again, just phenomenal scenery. And that site that nobody gets to go there unless you hike there. So it's like you get the site to yourself. So for me, running into ancient sites along the way is just a really a special thing about trekking and being on foot and exploring. It's that you feel like you're out there exploring, and you've just experienced, seen something for the first time, and it's almost as if you're discovering it and nobody else has seen it. So yeah, Peru for sure.
Uh, well, you really just spoke to me because I went to Peru a couple years ago and there was a lot of protests going on, so we actually didn't get to go to Machu Picchu. So that one's like
Oh,
top of the list for me right now. So
oh,
I might be emailing you later as
yes,
well.
def do so. Yeah,
All right, I will. You can count on that.
good.
Um, okay, well, Sheri, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for joining us. You really have such a talent for empowering people. Obviously, this is your line of work, but yeah, you're just so good at empowering people to take on these journeys, and we're so grateful that you came and shared some of your wisdom with us tonight. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. It's a great opportunity.
All right, well, maybe we'll see you on at some point in the future to cover some more hikes. But yeah, thank you again, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone, before we close the show, I have just a couple more reminders, starting with we are going to invite you to participate in a brief survey when I close the Zoom call. So we are planning our next season of Monday Night Travel, and we would love your feedback as we do so. So please leave your comments, your feedback, your what you would like to see on MNT in the future. We would love to hear it. So thank you for that. And while we are approaching the end of our season, we do still have two more shows on the docket. So next week, we will have Rick Steves' guide Patricia Fannin on. She'll be covering Italy's Verona, Padova, and Ravenna. And then for our season finale, we will have Monday Night Travel favorite Lucas Peters back on. He is a guidebook author, and he will be covering his recent trip around Portugal with his family. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. And until then, happy travels.